All right, we're going to do something pretty ambitious today. We are going to cover 1,000 years of history in just a few minutes. From the birth of an empire in the deserts of Arabia, through its incredible golden age, its shattering fracture, and its dramatic rebirth. This is the epic story of the Islamic world's Middle Eastern heartland.
So, picture this. Before the 7th century, the Arabian Peninsula was, kind of a backwater. It was the backyard to the great Byzantine and Persian empires, really just home to a collection of different polytheistic tribes. But then, in what feels like the blink of an eye, it becomes the absolute heart of a new world empire, a unified Muslim nation that would literally change the course of history. So, what on earth could spark a transformation that massive?
Well, it all started with a single, powerful spark, the birth of a new faith. A faith that wouldn't just unite a bunch of divided peoples, but would also lay the groundwork for a truly global civilization.
Okay, so let's walk through the key moments. Around 570 CE, Muhammad is born in the city of Mecca. Then, starting around 610, Muslim tradition holds that the Quran was revealed to him. Now, after facing persecution for his new message, he and his followers migrate to the city of Medina in 622. This event, the Hijrah, was so important that it actually marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar. And by the time of his death, just 10 years later, he had done the unthinkable. He had united the tribes of Arabia into a single Muslim nation.
But Muhammad's death created a huge leadership crisis. Who would lead this new community? The solution they came up with was a brand new role, the Caliph, or Khalifa, which means successor. This person would be a single figurehead, the religious, political, and military leader of the entire Muslim world.
Right, but the question of who should actually be the caliph, well, it created a massive rift, right from the very beginning. One group, who would eventually become the Shia, believed that leadership had to pass through the prophet's bloodline, specifically to his cousin and son-in-law, Ali. But the other group, who would become the Sunnis, argued that no, the leader should just be chosen from among those most qualified, and this political disagreement would grow into the single greatest religious divide in Islam.
So, even with all these internal tensions bubbling under the surface, this new faith was just this incredible engine for expansion. Let's move into the era of empire, because this is where we see the flourishing of a new golden age.
First up, you have the Umayyads. These guys really changed the game. They moved the capital out of Arabia and into Damascus in Syria. They made the caliphate a hereditary monarchy, so it was passed down from father to son. And under their rule, the empire exploded, stretching all the way from Spain to Central Asia. They really solidified the Arab identity of the empire and built some of the most iconic structures, like the amazing Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem.
But after about 90 years, the Umayyad dynasty just couldn't hold it together. It crumbled under the weight of rebellions and civil wars. And in 750, a new dynasty, the Abbasids, brutally seized power. And they kicked off a completely new era. Their focus wasn't so much on conquering new lands anymore, but on developing the civilization they already had.
And the Abbasids? Wow. They built this magnificent new capital, Baghdad, which very quickly became the largest, most prosperous city on the planet. This was the beating heart of the Islamic Golden Age. You had the legendary House of Wisdom, where scholars translated all the great works of Greek and Persian thinkers. This fueled these unbelievable advances in science, mathematics, and philosophy. This was the world of the Arabian Nights, vibrant, brilliant, and sophisticated.
But here's the thing about golden ages. They don't last forever. While the culture was flourishing, the central political power of the Abbasid Caliph in Baghdad started to crumble. The empire began to fracture.
And by the 10th century, the idea of a single, unified empire was basically gone. Power was totally fractured. You still had the Sunni Abbasids claiming the caliphate from Baghdad, sure, but down in Egypt, the Shia Fatimids set up a powerful rival caliphate in their new capital, Cairo. And all the way over in Spain, a remnant of the old Umayyad dynasty was ruling its own independent state from Cordoba. The map was getting complicated.
This political mess created a totally new power structure. When the Seljuk Turks, who were these fierce warriors from Central Asia, took control of Baghdad, they didn't just get rid of the caliph. Instead, they came up with a new title, Sultan. And this move effectively split power in two. The Sultan had the real military and political control, while the caliph became this revered but ultimately symbolic religious figurehead.
So now you have this fractured, politically divided world, which, of course, is a very vulnerable world. And in the centuries that followed, it got hit by two devastating waves of invasion that would change absolutely everything.
The first wave came from the west.
In 1095, European crusaders invaded and managed to capture Jerusalem. At first, the Muslim world was just too divided to do much about it. But about a century later, a legendary Kurdish sultan, Saladin, managed to unite the Muslim forces of Syria and Egypt. He then crushed the Crusaders at the Battle of Hattin and triumphantly recaptured Jerusalem for Islam.
Now, the Crusaders were a huge deal, a serious century-long challenge to the region, but they were absolutely nothing compared to the world-shattering storm that was about to break from the vast steppes of Central Asia.
The Mongols. Under Genghis Khan and his descendants, they created the largest contiguous land empire in the history of the world. And to the people who stood in their way, they were just an unstoppable, terrifying force of nature. In the year 1258, the grandson of Genghis Khan, a man named Hulagu, laid siege to Baghdad. The caliph refused to surrender, and in response, the Mongols sacked the city. They destroyed its great library, a treasure of human knowledge, and they massacred its people. The Golden Age didn't just fade away. It came to a brutal, catastrophic end.
The symbolism of the end was just horrific and final. The Abbasid Caliph himself was rolled up in a carpet and trampled to death by horses, a deliberate, bloodless execution reserved for royalty. Just like that, 500 years of the Abbasid Caliphate, the central institution of the Sunni world, was over.
But even after a catastrophe of that magnitude, history doesn't just stop. From the absolute devastation of the old world, a new order began to emerge. New powers rose up to take the lead.
And one of the most unlikely new powers was the Mamluks of Egypt. Now, these guys were originally Turkic slave soldiers. They were literally slaves who became the masters. And in 1260, they achieved the impossible. They defeated the Mongols at the Battle of Ain Jalut. This was the first major stop to the Mongol advance anywhere. They then went on to expel the last of the Crusaders, cementing their reputation as the new defenders of Islam.
At the same time, another power was growing in Anatolia. Around the year 1300, a leader named Osman founded a small state that would grow into the Ottoman Empire. In 1453, they pulled off a world-changing victory, conquering Constantinople and finally ending the 1,000-year-old Byzantine Empire. And then in 1517, they conquered the Mamluks in Cairo, and the Ottoman Sultan took on the title of Caliph for himself, becoming the new leader of the Sunni world.
So by the time we get to the 16th century, the political landscape had completely reformed. The Islamic world was now dominated by three large, stable, and incredibly powerful new states. They're often called the gunpowder empires. You had the Sunni Ottoman Empire in the center, the Shia Safavid Empire in Persia, and the Sunni Mughal Empire over in India.
And so, a brand new chapter had begun. The 1,000-year story of a single caliphate was well and truly over. It had been replaced by a world of powerful, competing empires. And the big question was now, what would this new era of global power bring?